Good afternoon, everybody. It's great to see so many of you here again. I'm just going to show you the slides now, and just a moment. And perhaps you could just confirm that everyone can see them at this point.
Absolutely. All broadcasting loud and clear, Matthew.
Fantastic. Okay. Just a reminder again, there's a number of you here from different countries, and English may not be your first language. I'm going to try and speak as slowly as possible, and I'm relying on Duncan to slow me down if necessary, because I'm afraid I do have a tendency to speak quickly. So apologies for that. Another quick apology as well, just to mark the final of these 3 FESPA seminars. Around my office in buildings nearby, they've decided to set off not 1 but 2 sets of building works. So I hope we won't be disturbed by any noise, but apologies if we are. But today marks this webinar marks the 3rd point in the buyer's journey, and we'll come to that shortly. First of all, though, I just want to take us all to somewhere where we probably all go on a regular basis, and that's the supermarket. And actually, what we're doing at the supermarket is typically we're looking around for the best priced shopping solution. It's certainly what the supermarkets think we're doing. So we'll either choose a supermarket because it's just down the road from us, or because they're cheaper than their counterparts. So I eat a lot of chocolate cookies when I'm preparing for webinars. I don't actually mind where they come from. I choose them either from convenience of sight, or because I'm choosing the cheapest possible option to buy those cookies. And effectively, what I'm doing, and what we all do when we go to supermarkets, is we're shoppers. And the trouble is that many print buyers are also shoppers. So if they're going to either a printer purely for convenience because they've always used them, because they're nearby, without necessarily any real engagements, or more likely these days, as we go into an era where it's increasingly easy to communicate with print companies all over the world, more likely they're buying on price. So they're shoppers. They're just looking around, and they'll come to you, they'll ask for a quote, and they'll pick the cheapest one. And of course, what print companies would really like are buyers. Is there a difference? Yes, there is. Buyers are people who are prepared to sit down and discuss the right outcome for them, but also for the supplier as well. Shoppers don't really care. Shoppers have no loyalty. Shoppers just go around and are very fickle. They will move from shop to shop, and they'll increasingly choose on price. Buyers are more engaged with the people from whom they're purchasing. So really, we want to try and move away from the mentality of the supermarket and more into a more specialist shop which engages with its customers and creates much better, more valuable relationships. And of course, we all know that leads to better sales and, as importantly, better profit margins. So for those of you who are new to this week's seminar, and for those of you who'd like a little refresher from the previous 2 webinars that we've done, I'm just going to quickly remind you of the buyer's journey so far. So in webinar 1, we talked about positioning. I reminded you that over 60% of the buyer's journey is undertaken without you being involved. So the customer is going to be doing their research about you, and you need to make sure that you're putting the right message out. So your positioning these days is more important than ever. Simply assuming that a buyer will start their journey with a call that you've made to them, a cold call, and do their entire journey in conjunction with you, these days is increasingly unlikely. You have to be sending out a message that is both online and offline, that they can research themselves. So we talked about the importance of target audience, the importance of making sure that you've got messages that were aimed specifically at particular types of people that you wanted for your print company. And we talked about the importance of understanding the pain that these buyers underwent, the challenges they faced in their jobs, and the solutions that you could bring. And we talked about the importance of making all your messaging about me, the customer, not about you, the print supplier. And then we moved on to our second week, to webinar 2, and by that point we decided that the customer had engaged, they'd liked your position, they felt that your company was one with which that they would like to engage. So therefore, you're sitting down and you're talking directly about the potential of doing work for your customer. And some of the key things we talked about here were not staying on price, not begging, not seeming desperate, but instead creating sticky solutions so that customers had no option but to stay. And finally, once you had customers who were engaged with you and working happily with you, making them your sales force, turning them into raving fans, making them really enthusiastic about your company, so that they would be happy to pass on warm leads to you from their business contacts. So once we've got all that, we're then really getting close to your customer placing work with you. We're at the point where we need to sit down and get the right deal. And that's what today is all about. Because at this point, you can either say yes to everything that the customer wants. But the trouble is with that then you may end up feeling that you've given everything away. And actually, you've got the right to a lot as well. So it's really, really important these days, if you're an engaged customer, that you sit down and you negotiate with them to create something that works for both sides, to make sure that you get something as well as the customer just beating you down on price, because that's what it feels like sometimes. It feels like the customer is hammering at you for price and that they will move away if you don't give them what they want. But good buyers engage with the right companies. Price is still important, but they're actually prepared to have a conversation with you about getting the right outcome. So we're going to cover that today, and our agenda, as ever, will have 3 things. And the first thing we're going to talk about is actually realizing, sometimes it's very easy to think that this is impossible. I'm sure maybe that some of you felt that the title was impossibly optimistic. How on earth could you get 5% more cash for your print? We have to be thinking in the right way. So we're going to cover that. In order to get what we want, we also need to get the right goals. So the second part of today's webinar will be about setting flexible goals. And as part of that, I use a system called NICE in goal setting. We'll talk about that. And one of those elements in there are called extras. So the final part of today's webinar will be to cover what extras are and how do you use them effectively to make sure that you get the best possible deal for your company when you're dealing with clients who want to place work with you. So again, just for housekeeping, I'm going to talk to you for about 30 minutes, and then I'll be delighted to accept questions. I hope there'll be lots of discussion. We've had some great discussion on the previous webinars. I hope that will carry on with this webinar. So just before we get stuck right into the first topic of mindset, I just want to have a quick reminder. Why is this element of the sales process so important? Why should you be thinking about it? Why should you be engaging with it? And the first one is that actually you'll create better relationships with your customers. Actually, most customers respect the fact that you stand up to them on price. If someone just gives way to me on price, I've got an easy job as a buyer, but I won't have any respect for that printer. I'll take what I can, I'll beat them down as much as possible. But if someone's actually standing up to me, then I'm forced to work with them. And together we can actually create something more worthwhile. It may seem counterintuitive that by saying no, you get a better relationship, but sometimes that is the case. And of course, when we do that, if you're negotiating correctly, you've got much more control over the outcome because you'll be using strategies and tactics. And chances are, the other side isn't, because the buyer often doesn't think about negotiation. If you've thought about your negotiation, you've prepared for it, you can lead the buyer through the negotiation process. You'll be in control. So you've got a much better chance of getting the outcome that you want. And of course, the outcome that you want is achieving the right sales and the right profit margins. Let's just think about that title again. Let's think about how to raise your print, how to get 5% more cash when selling print. What does that do? It's not just a 5% extra in turnover. Potentially, that could be about 50% more profit margin. And that's a huge thing to achieve. So it's really important. Printers who don't think about their negotiation, they're the ones who won't get those same profit margins. They won't achieve the same sales. They'll be led by their customers and have lost control when they're sitting down and trying to get the right deal. And of course, those customers won't respect them in the same way. They'll find it much harder to engage with those customers to create the right partnership. So let's get right on with how these three things that you should be thinking about when you're negotiating. And let's start right off with mindset, because this is the question that a lot of people pose. Can we really, really get higher prices? And the answer is yes, you can. And I'm going to tell you a story about it. First of all, I just want to remind you that we talked in the last webinar about how many people in the print industry sell on price. They make the whole conversation about price. They start off by asking for quotes. The first thing I have in so many sales pitches when printers come to me is, can I do you a quote? And we're talking all about price at that point. And the printer is seeming desperate. And they're not really engaging with me. They're just asking me for a quote. They're not making it all about me. So let's talk about how you can sell your print for 5% more. This is a true story. When I started up Print and Procurement, I run negotiation training, and I remember actually the very, very first time that I ran a session when I started up Print and Procurement, and I went to the client, and I was talking to the commercial director of the company, and I said, why have you engaged me to do negotiation training? He said, Matthew, I'm going to tell you a story. And he said his print team, his sales team, went out with prices to customers, and they were given a certain amount of room to negotiate with. So they could go out with a price, the customer could negotiate with the salesperson, and the salesperson could give way to a certain amount. And after that, they had to go back and discuss the job with the senior management before they could reduce beyond a certain amount. And time again, they came back and they negotiated to as much as they were allowed to, but the job. And the commercial director was getting really, really fed up with this. The commercial director was wondering what was happening. And he decided to try an experiment one week. And that experiment was he raised, without telling the sales team, he raised the minimum price that they could negotiate down to by 5%. And at the end of that week, he had almost as much work as he had in a typical week, but work that was at 50% more profit because he'd added 5% onto those prices. So a big difference for that company. And the reason was that the sales team had been giving way too much. They weren't negotiating. And when we sat down with them, we were able to give them some strategies and some tools, so they're able to go out and carry on getting those prices without issue from their customers. But that's all very well because that's their company and you're faced with your company. And sometimes the feeling is, I can't do that. And often that is down to our mindset. We're so used in the print industry to be being told it's all about price. And sometimes we have to challenge that because when I buy, it's not always about price. And we're going to cover this in just a few slides' time. It's not always about price. But when you're faced with the competition, the really keen competition for jobs, then sometimes it does seem that it is all about price. It can be very hard to get yourself out of that way of thinking. But sometimes talking to someone else about a particular negotiation or particular price challenge you have will give you ways to work around it. So if you can actually talk to one of your colleagues, if you're facing a particularly difficult negotiation with one of your clients, often they can come up with ideas for you because they're not as emotionally involved with it as you will be. And also, the very act of explaining a situation to somebody else, that can be a very powerful way of actually you working out in your head exactly what you should do. I'll sometimes talk to my wife or even the cat to tell them about an issue that I have, and at the end of explaining things, I'll have worked out in my head what I need to do. So that's the first bit. about overcoming mindset. We have to get ourselves out of the fact that it is all about price. And we also have to get ourselves out of the mindset that we feel that the other party will always win. Because if we think that the other party will win, that means that we're thinking about a negotiation where there is a winner. But that means that there's also a loser. And win-lose negotiation is not a healthy way to negotiate. I'll show you an example of this. I'll show it in a diagrammatic form as we go through today's webinar. But what I want you to think about at the moment is not win-lose, but win-win. A good negotiation should have something in it for both parties. It should be a win-win situation. And I'm going to show you right now an example how this could be. We're going to talk about buying a brochure. So the first thing I said was there are sometimes many reasons why people don't buy on price. So let's have a think about different reasons why people might choose to engage with a particular printer. Yes, price could be one of them, but there's a whole load of others as well. Can they do the job in the time that you need? Because not everyone can do that. If you need a quick turnaround printer, that may well cut out quite a lot of the competition. How is that printer going to look after you? That's really important as well, because you may have certain requirements, and not all printers are capable of giving you the service levels that you may absolutely need for your business. What clients do they have? Some people will place print because they know their market sector or their competition are using that supplier and they want to be in on the same supply base. Quality levels, vital. We all know that there are variations in quality between different printers. If you're looking for the right quality level of brochure, then you may be developing your choice around your requirements. And it could be that you want a printer who's got exceptional quality, but equally, you might be just as happy looking for a printer that can turn things out more cost efficiently, and you'll be looking for one who's got maybe slightly less stringent quality controls because they're ideal for your product, and you don't want a all bells and whistles solution from a really high quality printer. Location. If you're press passing, or if you've got complicated delivery requirements, the location can be absolutely vital. It can make a huge difference to the overall cost of the job. The machinery that the printer has, again, can make a huge difference to the cost efficiency of a job. The culture of the company. Some companies actually understand particular types of businesses, and you want to use those ones. So if I have a direct mail job or if I have a magazine, I absolutely want a printer who's in that market sector. It doesn't matter if someone comes in at a much cheaper price. If they don't understand the business, chances are there's going to be a massive mistake, and that's going to end up costing me an awful lot of money. And finally, the printer's reputation as well. A lot of print buyers talk to each other about different printers and what they're really like, and that can make a huge difference. I've certainly been warned off printers before, and I've also had my eyes open to other ones who maybe haven't crossed my radar, simply through by talking to other buyers. So what do we have there? We've got 8 other reasons that I've just put down on that slide, and I made that slide up in a couple of minutes. 8 other reasons as to why people might be choosing on reasons other than price. There must be other ones than that I haven't put on there. So let's go back to this brochure then. We talked about selling your print for 5% more cash. I actually bought a brochure and I paid 12% more for it. 12% more. Why did I do that? Well, the reason I did that was that it was a brochure for an exhibition, and the end user had actually given absolutely no forethought to what was coming up, and we had a last-minute rush job, and it was really important that this brochure was at this particular exhibition. So yeah, I could have shopped around for a cheap price, but actually I wanted a supplier I could really trust, and that supplier, sure, they charged me 12% more, but they guaranteed me that they would have it done on time. They'd have proofs over that afternoon to be signed off, and that they would get it into the exhibition hall, which is no mean feat. If you have couriers turning up who turn away as soon as they see a security person at the door, you never get your brochures. They were sending a dedicated vehicle there with someone who would get it to the exhibition stand in the hall. And if they didn't do that, they guaranteed they would not bill me. So that gave me huge security of mind. Really important, and that was worth paying extra for in that particular situation. So that's 12% more. So I hope I've convinced you in this section of the webinar that it can be about more than lowest price. And getting higher prices is possible if we think about things in the right way and if we take the right mindset on doing that. And the other thing is that to do that, we need to understand that negotiations should be win-win negotiations. This win-lose thing has to go out the window. Okay, there shouldn't be a loser. But in order to do that, we need one important thing. The thing we're going to talk about in the second part of this webinar. We need flexible goals. So I'm going to show you a price line now. It's a line that's just sloping down the slide, as you can see, and we've got an arrow at the top. And that arrow at the top indicates the first price that a printer may put in to the buyer. And that's a high price because we all know that buyers like to negotiate. So often a printer will put in a falsely high price to give themselves a negotiation room. And I know that as a buyer. So the first thing I say to the printer is, can I have a cheaper price? And the price moves down just as this arrow is moving down the line. And the printer gives that to me without any problem. So I think, okay, I'll have some more, please. I'd like a lower price again. And the printer says yes. And the price goes down just as the arrow is going down the line. And I push again. And already we've got right down the bottom of the line there. And for me as a buyer, that's great because I've got a much, much lower price. And you as a printer, you've got nothing. So how do we get around that? Because one of the issues is we're only talking about price in that particular negotiation. And if you don't have anything else, then you have a problem. Because all you can do is talk about price, and you can either try and stand firm and hope that the buyer will stay with you and not go to someone who's cheaper, or you can give way because you're keen to get the job. But you're in a win-lose negotiation. So you need flexible goals. So what else can you throw into that? Because the feeling is, well, I can only give away on price and that's it. Let's talk about other issues that could be important both to you and to the buyer. Scheduling. That can make a huge difference. If you need a tight schedule as a buyer, I might be prepared to pay more. And you as a printer might actually be quite happy to give a job away at a slightly lower price if there's flexibility in the schedule, if you can put it in your downtime when your presses are quiet. Payment terms. Again, many of my clients now pay me up front, and I'm happy to talk about a lower price if I don't have to spend a lot of time and resource chasing for that money. But equally, I will pay more sometimes, or people will pay more in order to get better payment terms, longer payment terms. The amount of work that's around. The whole basis of what is being negotiated changes according to whether you're talking about one job or whether you're talking about a large, regular volume of work. Extra services. You may well be able to get more cash in for your print if you're able to sell extra services around that print at the same time, if you can bring them into negotiation. And also, there's some other things which can be of huge value to you that are of low value to the client, or vice versa. But let's take one of the former. Let's take something that could be really valuable to you, but costs the client nothing. If you've got a high-profile piece of print that's going out in a particular market sector that you're looking to increase your profile in, to have your name on a client's piece of print could be really valuable to you. Maybe there's a way in which you can get an awful lot of value into your negotiation by having more flexible negotiation goals, by not making it all about price. So I said earlier that I set my goals according to a particular system, according to the NICE system. And that's not just me being nice to people. Nice stands for 4 elements that I need in my goals. Needs, the intended, concessions, and extras. If I set my goals around this way, I know exactly where I am, where I can go to, where I want to go to. So I have my needs, which is what I must absolutely have, or I have to walk away from the deal because it just doesn't work for me if I don't have those needs. I have my intended, which is where I'd like to end up. I have my concessions, which are things that I'm prepared to give way on, things that I'm prepared to give to the other party. And I have my extras, which I'm going to talk about in just a moment in the third part of this webinar. Together, they make a really powerful, flexible way of creating goals. And in each of those 4 boxes, I will have a number of things in there. It won't just be one thing. There'll be a variety of negotiation variables in those boxes. Some of them may be in more than one box, but I will have a list of variables in all those 4 boxes. So what I want to do now is to actually move to one of those boxes so you can understand just how you can use just one of those boxes. And what I'm choosing to talk about today is extras. So, just to summarize that second section of the webinar, make sure that you're not negotiating with straight line negotiation. Make sure you're not sliding down that line like that poor print salesperson was that we looked at earlier, who was just giving away on price. We were seeing the job price move down, we were seeing the arrow move down the line. Make sure that you've got flexibility so that you've got ways to stop yourself being beaten down that straight line. And the way to do that is to create nice negotiation goals. So we'll move on to the final part of today's webinar, these extras. And the first question I'm sure you'll be asking is, what on earth are they? So extras are things that you would like to have. They're not essential things to make sure that the deal goes ahead, but they are things that you would like to have when you finish your negotiation. And it's a good chance for you to be really creative when you're setting your negotiation goals at this point, because you will see just what the extra things you might like. So here's some examples. We talked about some of them earlier. Payment up front, a nice, easy schedule, regular work. Maybe if you're dealing with a big organisation, often they have multiple buyers. Wouldn't it be nice to get a referral into another department that doesn't yet work with you? It'd be nice maybe to get your name in a brochure. There's all sorts of things that you can put up there. They will vary according to your own personal needs, according to your creativity. I've seen all sorts of things, names on trucks, cake on Friday, testimonials. There's all sorts of things you can put on there. It's up to you to think exactly what you might like if you had those as extras. And I'm just going to give you 30 seconds to have a think about what your extras might be. So I hope that that's going through your head at the moment. You're thinking, what could I add? What would I like if I was negotiating with all of my clients tomorrow? What else would I like to get? And you have that list in there. So what good does that do you? Well, let's look at our price line again. So let's go back to the beginning of the negotiation, or possibly the price beating that we illustrated in the webinar. So we have an arrow right back at the top of the line again, the initial offer price is quite high. And I'm going to ask the printer now, could you move your price please? But this printer has got their list of extras. They've got their list of things to ask for. So if they are going to move on price, they're going to get other things back in return. So they're going to go, yeah, okay, Matthew, let's have a look. I might be able to prepare to move on my price, but in return, I want you to give me an easy schedule, and I'd like a referral to someone else in your team who's also placing print, so that I can have a meeting with them, so that we can have a discussion, and I can see if I can become one of their approved suppliers as well. And I go, okay, yeah, I'll schedule. That's something on this particular job I can be quite easy about. Often our buyers are a little bit more rigorous on schedule than they really need to be because they're trying to build themselves into some wiggle room. So I can give you an easy schedule, and sure, I'll introduce you to someone else on my team. It's no problem for me, it doesn't cost me anything, and I've just got something on price. So let me try and push again, please. And the printer comes back to me and says, well, okay, but I'd like name and brochure. Maybe I was pushing it a bit more, depending on the brand that I'm representing. And I'd like some regular work, please. I think, okay, well, if I get this price, then maybe it's worth the regular work. But hey, I'm really having to work for this now. You know, I'm used to printers who have just given way and said yes, and I want to use this printer, but I'm having to work hard. I'm going to chance my arm. I'm going to ask one more time. Can I have another price reduction? Arrows at the bottom, but you want payment up front. I'm thinking, God, actually, no, I don't want to do that. I'm going to stick here. I'm going to stick. I'll give you the name of the brochure. I'll give you the regular work, but I'm not moving down right to the bottom. I'm not moving down to that payment up front line. And suddenly, you've got a point where not only have you got a higher price than if you just gave away the whole time, but you've also got, let's refresh your memory, you've got an easy schedule, you've got an in-house referral, you've got your name in the brochure, and you've got the promise of extra work and a higher price. Now, possibly you're thinking, does this really work in real life? And the answer is absolutely yes. I'm going to give you an example. I wrote another example for this webinar, and then this week I had a fantastic example that I'm going to show you now. I was pitching for some work with the clients, and they wanted to give it to me. And of course, at the end, I got the phone call going, Matthew, we'd really like to work with you, but we need a lower price. Well, okay, I'm happy to talk about price, but you know, let's be fair. You know, what do I get in return? And I gave them some ideas. I gave them some things I wanted, and I put together a new proposal for them. And I moved on price, and in return, I wanted some better payment terms. I wanted a testimonial. I wanted the schedule of the project done to suit me. And they went away and thought about it, and they said, actually, we'll agree to a couple of those extra points you wanted, but we can't do payment up front. The schedule doesn't quite work for us. So actually, we prefer to work to your original proposal and not to ask for a price reduction after all. So because I'd used extras, I kept my price the way it was. The temptation would be to the client, actually, I want this project. It's going on in August. It's a quiet month. I'd like this project. So maybe I should just go back to them and go, yes. But because I used my extras, I kept the price the same. So it really does work. There's one other phrase when you're using extras that I'd like you to remember. And that's WIFM. So what does WIFM mean? WIFM stands for what's in it for me. And that's actually a phrase that you can use in two ways. First of all, I want you to remember it. So every time you're tempted to give way on something, you're going to go, hang on, what's in it for me? And secondly, you can actually say that back to the people with whom you're negotiating. You can say, what's in it for me? And that will force them to think. And you'll often have to give them some ideas as to what you might like in return. But it suddenly turns into a rather different conversation. It's not just you giving away on price. It's you saying, I can be flexible, but I want things in return. Now again, you're thinking, does this really work in real life? Because that buyer has got another 4 or 5 printers out there. They can just go to them instead. So I've got to move on price because they're just going to go to the one with the lowest price. Let's remember that mindset that we had to begin with. Let's remember the other reasons why they might be choosing you as a printer. All those things we put on the slides earlier. Things like your reputation, your clients, your plant list, your location, the schedule you can do, your capacity. A whole load of other things they might be choosing you for. And let's remember as well that if you've done your positioning correctly, and if you've put over a strong initial sales pitch, that client will be engaged with you. And I have spent more at printers because I've wanted to use that printer. They've got me engaged with them, and I've realised that they're the right printer for this project. And of course I'll try and push them on price because that's my job as a buyer. I'll try and push them on price. But if they've stood up to me, I've stopped pushing and I've still given them the job. If they've just given way, well, I've pushed them on price, I've got a better price. Great, I've got the printer I want and a low price. But the ones who've negotiated with me, when they've truly engaged with me, have got jobs and they've got them at higher prices. So let's just sum up this last section. Remember what extras are. They're the things that you should be asking for that you would like if you're ever having to make any concessions. So use them. If you're being pushed, use them. They will put the brakes on the buyer asking for more, and if you do a false concede, you've got some great stuff in return. But chances are you will stop them pushing you as far as they might. And finally, remember with them, always ask the buyer and yourself, what's in it for me? So as with all these webinars, I want to end today with some action points for you, things that you can put into practice straight away. And the first thing I want you to do is just experiment with this. Try putting your minimum price up, see what happens. I would be surprised if you suddenly lost loads of work. Secondly, I want you to go away and think about your variables. Think about a list of extras that you would like when you negotiate. And finally, I want you to go out and I want you to say whiff them a lot. I want you to say what's in it for me, both to yourself and to your clients. Because I want you to move away from the mentality that everyone around is just shopping, price focused, convenience focused, just going out and shopping. Okay? We want an end to the shoppers. We want to remember that we're engaging. If you've done your positioning correctly, if you've done your sales pitch correctly, we can be talking about buyers instead. Buyers who want a win-win situation, and that means you getting the right price for your job as well. So thank you very much for listening to me today. I hope you found that useful. And just on the slide now, a few ways in which you can connect with me. There's my email address up there. You can follow me on Twitter. Please connect with me on LinkedIn or Google+, and the website address for profitableprint.relationships.com. I welcome questions at this point. It'd be great to get a discussion going. So I'm going to hand back to Duncan. Duncan, if you'd like to take control back of the screen, and I welcome the opportunity to have questions from you all and to discuss any points you may have from today's webinar or anything that's relevant to it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Matthew. Some really useful insights there, some tips and tricks. I have just a question of my own, if I may, while the audience is preparing their own. Why do you think that so many printers have the wrong mindset in negotiation? Why is that? Is it because they're always getting beaten up on price and not sure how to address it, or what? You know, is that just my impression, or why is it?
I think there is an element of that. There's a lot of buyers out there who do focus on price, and I think, unfortunately, the print industry has done its fair element of encouraging buyers to think on price. I think also that every time I talk to a printer, they talk to me about the marketplace, about pricing, and they talk to each other about that as well. So we get into some sort of descending spiral at this point, where there's a constant belief it's all about price, and people aren't prepared to realise that the right buyers do buy things on value. The right buyers do choose on matters other than price. And it just seems to have been forgotten in the industry. And there are one or two suppliers out there who are absolutely moving away from such a price-focused sales drive, and they're seeing the results from it. And the reason they're having that success, I believe, is partly they've got some good offerings, they've got an unusual way of selling, but they've also got the right mindset, which says it's not all about price. So I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, no, that's thank you for that. And just, I know you're no longer an active print buyer as such.
I still do. I do still, do quite a few print projects as well. So I'm not maybe a buyer on a day-to-day basis, but I'm buying print every month. I'm helping my clients buy print every month as well. So I'm still very active at the buying phase as well.
Sure. I mean, just wondering, one of the things I often hear from some of my contacts in the print industry is that they're facing that challenge of feeling that there are competitors in their space who are price dumping in effect, almost trying to push them out of the marketplace. Are print buyers that susceptible to that? Is that something that really should be we should be thinking about, or is it really more something that's as I say, is it really happening, or is that just a misconception?
That's an interesting question. I think that there are some printers who are price dumping. I think that's a fair comment. I think that those who are doing that to extreme levels are those that maybe haven't got a sustainable business model. The extreme price dumping is often done because presses need to be filled right now. And I believe that that strategy means that buyers have to be very beware of whom they're dealing with, because if that supplier is on a shaky financial basis, do you want that supplier going bust on you whilst your job's in there? It's not a nice thing to happen to buyers. I've seen it happen to buyers, and I've seen people desperately trying to get transport in to take part-finished work out before the administrators come in and lock the doors. And that's a horrible situation for everyone to be in. But personally, I prefer to be working with financially stable suppliers. I think there has to be education, because not all buyers, some of the experienced buyers don't always realise what they're doing by taking those offers at face value. So there is price dumping going on there. I think that if you can create the right value proposition, then you have an alternative to price dumping, because you will be creating something that's more valuable to the buyer than just a cheap piece of print.
Okay, I think the key point there that you made is, if I can summarise, I think for you as an experienced buyer, the too good to be true price would ring an alarm bell for you.
It would, yeah. And I'm not saying that I wouldn't like to take advantage of it, but I'd need to research it extremely carefully first. So I had one fairly recently where I got a too good to be true price, and I looked at it, and I did go with it, but only after I'd looked at the management accounts for that printer. I'd had a long discussion with them on exactly how they were going to produce the job, so that I was sure that it was a regular work. I wanted to be sure that they were going to be able to produce it sustainably at that price. But at other times I've looked at it and I've done some research into the supplier, and I said, right, that's why that's a too good to be true price, because it really is too good to be true, and I'd sooner go with somebody else with whom I have rather more confidence that they're going to be still around when they're producing the job that I'm putting with them.
Okay, thank you for that. I'm conscious that we're running close to the end of our allotted time slot here, but just, I guess, probably the last question that we've got time to explore here. Are there other ways that print service providers can use the extras that you mentioned in the presentation there?
Yes, one way that you might want to do it, occasionally that you make an offer to someone and they bite your hand off, and you think, bother, I've pitched something too low. I think that there are printers who've gone in, they've put in a good price, and the buyer has just said yes. They've sounded so eager that you just instinctively know that actually you could have gone in at a higher price, and it's too late to change the price. But you still can use the extras. So if the buyer's going yes, you to go, and of course, in order for me to provide you with that price, I also need you to XYZ, starting listing your extras at that point. So it can be a great way to get out of a situation where you feel that possibly you might have priced something too low.
There's a way to negotiate back up rather than to resist negotiating down, I guess.
That's right, yes. That's a great way of summarising it, thank you.
Okay, no problem at all. Well, Matthew, thank you very much for sharing those thoughts and tips and tricks today. I certainly found a couple of those very useful. I hope that our audience members have as well. I'm afraid we're almost out of time for today's session, but just in closing, before I hand over to you, Matthew, just to say a couple of words about your excellent print industry negotiation handbook. For some of the lucky attendees to today's session, they'll get a free copy of that. But I know that you've got a special offer for those people who weren't amongst the first 10 to dial into the call. I'd just like to say to everyone, I really hope you've enjoyed not just today's session, but also the 2 previous sessions in this series on how to improve your marketing of your print services, the sales of your print services, and to maximize your profits within those sales. If I could just remind you all, the recordings of the sessions will be available on FESPA.com. They'll be there live from Monday, and I can just hand back to you now, Matthew, to offer you a chance just to mention your generous offer on the print industry negotiation handbook.
Thank you very much indeed, Duncan. That's appreciated. 2 things that I just like to talk to people about. I'd really like to keep in touch with you. So the first thing that I would love you to do is to go to the website profitableprintrelationships.com. You can see here, top right-hand corner, there's an ebook that's absolutely free, 10 common print selling errors and what to do about them. If you click on that image, you'll be able to download it for nothing. You'll also be subscribed to the newsletter. You'll get an article at a regular interval full of practical advice. Obviously, you can unsubscribe at any time, but it'd be great to be able to share that with you. The other thing is, as you said, Duncan, the negotiation handbook. If you go to the Profitable Print Relationships website, click on the Print Industry Negotiation Handbook tab, that takes you to this page, which has got lots of information about the book here if you want to find out more about it. So just go down to the bottom when you've read it. If you are been watching this webinar, you have the opportunity to buy the premium version for the price of the standard version. So what I'd like to do, if you'd like to buy it, is click the Buy Now button on the premium version. You'll go through to the shopping cart. There's a little opportunity for a discount code here. If you put FESPA in there in capital letters, you will have the right amount taken off the price, so you'll buy the premium version for the regular version. It's a time-limited offer. It will be ending fairly soon, so if you'd like to do that, I'd encourage you to do it sooner rather than later. And it would be great to keep in touch with you. So please, I hope that you'll buy the book, but I hope that you'll sign up for the ebook as well, and that we can stay in touch that way. So thank you for that. Duncan, is there anything that you wanted to cover off for the final part of today's session?
No, really, just to thank you again, Matthew, and thank all the attendees for joining today's session. And remember, you can find out more at FESPA.com, and obviously do follow us on Twitter at FESPA, and you can reach out to us through the FESPA.com website to find all our other social links, etc. there, plus lots of other tips and tricks on a wide variety of subjects.